Hi, Jeff.
Oh, hi, Lila. How are you?
Good.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So, for those of you who are watching today, we are interviewing Lila Marino-Camacho. And Lila has an interesting story. She's actually the founders of Habilitat. She's the daughter, and she grew up around Habilitat. She's been actively involved in Habilitat for many years. And today we're going to talk a little bit about what that was like. We're going to talk about the old days of Habilitat and you know what has transpired through all the evolutions. So let's jump right into it. So Lila, who is Lila? And how are you affiliated with Habilitat? Let's go there.
I am Lila Marino-Camacho, mother of one, grandmother of one. I'm a full-time seasoned realtor with Berkshire Hathaway, and I am a byproduct of Habilitat.
Okay, very good. So when you say you're a byproduct of Habilitat, you're originally from New York City, and you've been here a long time, but tell us, how did you end up in Hawaii, and when was that?
Very complicated story. However, I'll try to make it brief and it'll make sense, hopefully brief enough that it won't bore you either. But my mother was married 3 times in her life. My genetic father, the marriage did not work out. He got into some trouble, and my mother went on her way after that. And then she married this other man for another brief time, for probably, I would say, 3 or 4 years at max. And unfortunately, he had a drug problem, and she didn't know it. And when they found themselves in a predicament where he needed help, he found a place that was Phoenix House in New York. And he went to Phoenix House, went through the program. I don't believe he graduated the program. He left prematurely, but he did befriend a man named Vinnie Moreno. Vinnie Moreno was a director at Phoenix House at the time. And Vinnie had the opportunity, he was offered jobs, I believe in Washington. And then he was offered a job at a halfway house in Ever Beach. I don't know the name of it. It was a halfway house in Hawaii. And so what better place to go than to Hawaii? So he went to Hawaii shortly thereafter, 6 months, a year thereafter. The halfway house was in trouble, kind of fell apart. But as a result of him being there for so long, he was emotionally tied to a lot of kids in the program. And they didn't know what to do. They didn't know where to go. And they kind of went to him and said, hey, you know, let's open up a program. And that's how Habilitat was created, was to the demise of that halfway house. He rented a house in Kailua, I believe, on Awinala Street, and had 6 people, brought 6 people with him to the house. He reached out to Catholic charities in the area. They fed them, they helped them. He happened to befriend a woman named Karen White. She was very instrumental in the creation of Habilitat and helping him get connected in the industry where he could have emotional and financial support to just keep going. And so as a result, he formed Habilitat. In the meantime, going back to how I got to Hawaii, this second husband, his name was Frank Rosano, he kept in touch with Vinnie. And so Vinnie reached out to him and offered him help. They got a plane ticket together and shipped him off to Hawaii. I'm sorry, I have yapping dogs. Anyway, he went to Hawaii. He went through the program. He was at the reentry phase of the program, and he seemed to be doing well. And unfortunately, something happened and he took a fall. In the meantime, my mother, Vicki Moreno, had visited Hawaii. She spent 4 to 6 months in Hawaii. I stayed home with my grandmother in Queens, New York. And she kind of established, ties with Habilitat beyond Frank Rossano. When she came to get me and decided to move to Hawaii because her goal in life was to get out of New York. It was either going to be Florida or it was going to be Hawaii. And just, the way everything transpired, Hawaii was the place to be. She fell in love with Habilitat. She was very good friends with Vinnie Moreno, but there were no relations at that point. She was still married to Frank Rossano. She came back to get me. And on July 5th, we took a plane to Hawaii, not knowing what we were heading towards. It was a very tumultuous storm with Frank. He wasn't doing well. And sometime between the time that she left to get me and coming to Hawaii, he, what they call, fell. And it was with a couple of people in the program. They were all close friends. It was a clique. They were in a bad place, somehow got their hands on some drugs, and they fell. He struggled. He tried to get back on his feet. He was given a few chances to come back into the program. And at one point or another, he just couldn't do it, and he left. He left the marriage. He left Habilitat. I never seen or heard of him after that. Wow. So here we were. It was in the heat of July 5th. And we were living at Habilitat. At that point, my mother had decided that she was going to work at Habilitat. While she was gone, while she was at Habilitat when I was in New York, she actually was put into the program. She was in the reentry phase of the program. She forgoed the treatment phase. And she...
Okay, she wasn't a drug user, right?
No, she was not.
Right.
She never got high. She very rarely drank. She, as a matter of fact, before had me, was contemplating on being a nun. So she was very religious. And her background, again, was a colored background as well. My grandfather was a wino. He was an alcoholic, and he was very violent with my grandmother. And so there was just a lot going on. Her escape was the church at that time when she was growing up, and there were 6 of them. So she was the oldest. No, she was the second oldest. And she was kind of, the person to make sure everybody was okay. She always was that person. She always was the person to be depended on. She was the strength of the family. She was a beautician at Trade in New York City, in Brooklyn, actually. She brought the money in. My grandmother never worked. She always took care of children, whether it was children or grandchildren. She was always home taking care of the children. So there was a lot on her shoulders. And so push comes to shove, she wound up getting married, having me, and then her world, was turning, between second marriages and everything else. So unfortunately, Frank never made it. I heard he passed away, but I'm not quite sure if it was from an overdose or what. My mother and Vinnie were very close friends, and it developed into a relationship. And at that point, I remember them taking me out to this Mexican restaurant in Kailua and telling me that, you know, they were going to get married. And I just broke down and cried. I was emotional. I didn't know what to feel. It was just such a roller coaster. At the time, I was 12 years old.
Okay, 12. Wow.
Yeah, I was 12 years old. So this was 1972. And it was just a huge culture shock for me, you know, coming from New York City, being raised essentially by my grandmother because my mother worked, you know, 10, 12-hour days to put food on the table and to support the family. And then I come to this island, couldn't even understand the pidgin, couldn't understand the culture. It was just a huge culture shock for me. So it took me a long time, I think, to just kind of settle in. And really who I was exposed to were people in the program. You know, I came in the summertime. They planned on sending me to Kalaheo school. At the time it was intermediate school. And so, I don't know, September is when I went to school. So between July and September, I got to know the people. And just as anybody that comes into the program, the most important thing about Habilitat are the people and their, you know, their lives and their ups and downs. And because it's such a fishbowl environment, you get to know people very, very quickly in the program, and you become emotionally tied to these people. There are people there that know things about you that probably no other knows. You know, it's such an intimate setting in that respect. And so I did go to school at that point in September. They were planning to get married. And Vinnie Moreno adopted me. So when I was, I don't know, 13 or 14 years old, he adopted me. When I was 15 is when Vicky was born, my sister. So, so yeah, so that was the beginning of my journey at Habilitat.
Wow, it's a lot of history there.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I knew Vinnie and Vicky as my mentors and my teachers, and I was very lucky to have received most of my initial training from them, actually. And towards the end of your mom's life, she and I got to be very close. She was, you know, hands-on training me before she left us. I'm just wondering, like, well, I knew them because I worked under them and they trained me or whatever, but what was it? They're very, very strong. Both of them had very strong personalities. I often tell people your mom was probably the toughest gal that I'd ever encountered, the most passionate person that I've ever met. And I tell people all the time that Vicky taught me everything I know about being a decent man. You know, she really raised me. My own biological mother raised me to a certain point and then didn't know what to do with me because I was such a mess. But Vicky took over and took me into, you know, responsible adulthood or whatever. And, you know, there's a lot of us that attribute the fact that we're still alive, actually, to your mom and dad. I'm just wondering, what was it like growing up with those very powerful personalities? It must have been challenging at some point. Anything you can tell us about what it was like? I mean, they were both geniuses in their own right, very powerful personalities. It must have been tough for a kid growing up, especially at Habilitat. What was that like?
Yeah, well, that's all I know, right? You know, is the hand that you're dealt. Well, at Habilitat, well, so since when I started school, I did go to school like a regular kid, and then I would come back home and I would go to games. I would go to encounter groups. I would go into house meetings, GMs. I would pretty much filter in with the house. after my school days. I stayed at Kalahao till I was, I want to say 9th or 10th grade. And then I wound up quitting high school there and continuing my high school education at Habilitat, since they had accredited teachers there. And I lived.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, I got my high school diploma technically under Olamana.
Mm-hmm.
And, gained my credits through tests. I technically stopped school and graduated at around 17 years old. So in that time frame of when I, came full-time into Habilitat, I essentially joined the program. And I couldn't tell you the date, the time of when that happened, because it all kind of meshed together. But I've never gotten high in my life, never used illegal drugs. I socially drink, but I'm not a heavy drinker either. It just never appealed to me. Part of it, growing up, especially in the disco years and stuff, that I was exposed to all that kind of stuff, scared the shit out of me, because I knew that my father was watching over me, and he would literally visit me at Spats, or
What is Spats? Oh, the club.
At the Hyatt Regency. I was a little spatster. I loved going out. I loved dancing. That kind of was my childhood. I never had a childhood. And so when I became an adult, a young adult, I went out a lot. And I remember him coming and showing up at the club, just making sure that I was okay. And he wanted to meet all of my friends and basically put the fear of God into them, that if anything was to happen to me, that they would be answering to him, Vinnie Moreno. So that's how I was raised. I was raised in Habilitat. I never really had a childhood. My childhood was on the facility. My childhood was, doing what you do day in and day out with the house. That's pretty much what I did. I became accustomed to it, and I loved it. It was, it was pretty much at that point all I knew. And it did limit me in certain respects. I didn't go to a prom. I didn't, do things that young children do. But at the same token, I was exposed to so much knowledge, so much wisdom, so much hurt, actually. The highs and the lows that people go through at Habilitat, I was exposed to, and eventually groomed as a salesperson. And I learned skills there as well, just like people at Habilitat do.
So you never used drugs, you didn't have behavior problems, and they put you in the program. What is that all about? Why did they do that?
Well, it's not only about the drug, as you know, Jeff. That's the symptom of the problem. And so they felt that, since this was their environment that they lived and died for, they thought that me having exposure to it and learning my survival skills at Habilitat would carry me through to the woman I am today, which in essence it has. I'm a single mom. I've had to, ever since my daughter was 8 years old, I've had to provide on my own, for my daughter and myself. And really, it was the things at Habilitat that I learned in order to carry myself through till today.
So this kind of highlights the point that I like to make often, is that it's really not about the substance use. Habilitat is more about like you just said, survival skills, learning how to efficiently navigate life, how to be emotionally intelligent, how to make good decisions to further your cause, so that you can, thrive in a chaotic world, So I think this highlights the fact that it's not really about substance use. It's more about learning to live. And, we've often said that, Habilitat, Vinnie used to say this, Habilitat's not for everybody, but it can work for anybody.
That's right.
And ironically, you're not the only person that didn't have substance issues that have gone through the program and gained benefits from it. We've had, back in the 80s, we had, celebrities, children that, I remember one in specific, I won't mention names, but she didn't have a substance problem. She needed to learn to grow up or whatever. And there have been many that have benefited from that. I'm just wondering, as the founder's daughter being in the program, what was that like? Did you get special treatment, or did they make sure that you got what you were there for? Or I'll tell you, I just had my cousin, my second cousin, my first cousin's son just went through the program and just graduated actually about a month ago. But I made sure that he didn't get any special treatment. If anything, he got it harder than anybody else, because I didn't want anybody thinking, oh, he's related, so he's going to get special treatment. He got no special. In fact, I didn't even talk to him for like the first 3 months. Was it similar for you? Did they give you any special treatment, or did you get it like everybody else?
Contrary to the special treatment. As a matter of fact, I was the one that, the game was on me all the time. I was always put on point. And if I ever stepped out of line, I was, they were the first to reprimand me. They sometimes, when I was actually in the program, would take, a back seat and allow whoever the director was at the time to handle whatever needed to be handled with me. When I was an employee at Habilitat, obviously they were my bosses. They were human as well. When they would get into fights, I would be the brunt of it. I would get in the middle, whether I liked it or not. And as a result, I quit twice, actually.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, I did. So being employed at Habilitat, I remember I was trained admin-wise and stuff, but ultimately my profession was sales. I sold advertising specialties. I went on the road, canvassed with Jay Dotson and other people that could vouch for it, where we would literally be given an area and we would knock on doors, and that was the sales training I got. So anything that was required of anybody, I was part of it. There was no special treatment at all. If anything, the finger was pointed at me more because I'm supposed to know better, So it did make me stronger, but at times it was difficult. Yeah. I was also in the induction. I was in the induction program when I came back the last time, when I gave birth to Alicia.
For people who don't know, we call our admissions department induction. So when she says I was in induction, that's basically our admissions department. So when I came in the program in the mid 80s, you were, I don't know, a year or two older than me or whatever. I was a kid. Well, you were a kid, for God's sake, at that point. You were, maybe 21 or something like that. You're very young. I was 18. But I remember you working in the admissions department, and you were dealing with the people that were coming from the mainland, I think, if I remember correctly. But it sounds like you worked in several different departments: admin, sales, admissions, acquisitions. Yeah. So you were involved in the Habilitat workforce development programs, which is one of the things that we're renowned for. A lot of people say that we have the most evolved and developed workforce development programs in the rehabilitation industry. And I think that's a testament to Vinnie's genius, actually. You know, he created a situation that, you know, I think he understood. I think his vision was like ahead of his time or whatever, because he understood that, you know, it wasn't about just stop using drugs. It was about developing a life. And I think he understood, well, he used to teach us this, so I knew he understood this, that, you know, when you stop using drugs, what are you going to do? You're going to spend a third of your life trying to earn a living at least, and you need to develop skills. Now, years later, long after, you know, he's been gone, there's all this science that points to the reduction of recidivism. One of the key factors is skill level, right? So job skill level, education level, and now we know, because of all the science, that Habilitat has actually incorporated recidivism reduction into the program before it was even called that. In fact, as I've grown and learned and gone and taken courses and all these things, what I figured out is Vinnie was using cognitive behavioral therapy before it was like the newest buzzword or whatever. And now in this day and age, that's like the standard level of treatment. And he created a system that, you know, we use cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, on a mass scale. That's what he taught us. So when I was going to learn about these therapeutic techniques and you know, formal classes, what I realized is most of what they were teaching, I already learned from Vinnie. It wasn't called that, but it was the same thing. So the irony of it, you know, it's incredible, because he was way ahead of his time. And it turns out that a lot of the stuff that he says, and a lot of stuff that he used to get criticized for, actually, it's all true. And it's all now like mainstream, you know, majorly accepted concepts of how to change behavior and rehabilitate people. So that's my segue off into something else. But the bottom line is, what I wanted to know is, how did your attendance and your training in those workforce development programs, how did that shape your future? How did that prepare you for the career you have now? And just to, you know, a quick caveat, you're my realtor. You've helped quite a few of us at Habilitat recognize our dream of being, you know, a homeowner. There's quite a few of us that you've helped navigate that. I couldn't be more happy. I mean, you helped me. In fact, if you remember, we were looking at all these places, and we walked into the one that I'm sitting in now. And as soon as we walked in, we looked at each other and we both knew, right? You remember that? And it was like, this is the one, isn't it? Yeah, this is the one. And you helped me navigate that process. And there's quite a few of us. How did the workforce development programs prepare you for your career and your life today, so many years later?
If it wasn't for that, I don't know what I'd be doing today, honestly. Habilitat prepared me emotionally, and they prepared me skill-wise to be able to put food on the table, to be able to live my life independently. And I remember Vinnie, even wherever, even if we weren't on the facility, he would test my peripheral awareness. He would put me on point and ask me questions, and he would grill me, you know, and teach me things that, you know, I just do second nature now. You know, knowing how to speak with somebody, knowing how to listen and translate that into helping that person. It's what I do for a living. It's, you know, what I taught my daughter, you know, growing up. And it's survival skills, quite frankly, you know, and everything goes hand in hand. You know, you're taught a skill, you're taught how to be able to handle yourself emotionally, where you think with your head and not with your gut. And then of course you educate yourself, you know, so it really is a combination of tools that Habilitat teaches you to be able to become independent and know when, you know to listen to your gut, know to listen to your your instinct, instinct comes into play as well.
Mhm. So your parents, they spent the better part of their lives building Habilitat. Why do you think they were very, very passionate, and they literally they pretty much lived there. Well, I remember at one point they lived in Enchanted Lakes or whatever, but most of the time, in the later years anyway, they lived right next door, which must have been difficult. But why do you think they were so passionate about this and spent their whole lives doing this? I mean, they didn't have to. They could have moved on. They could have done other things, but they stayed actively involved to the very end. Why is that, you think?
It's all about the people. It's about the cause. They truly believed in it. They were passionate, and they did whatever they needed to do to help people. My mother was buried in a Habilitat family T-shirt. That was her choice. Like, so to the grave, they gave it their all. And they just, that was their love. That was their passion. They loved the people part of it. They loved to be able to nurture somebody from, the skids to, putting a pen and paper in their hands and teaching them skills. That was their destiny. That was their legacy. When my father died unexpectedly from a heart attack, I was interviewed, I remember, and I believe it was Dan Cook, Howard, that guy Howard from Channel 9. Anyway, I remember him asking me, these questions. And, I thought to myself, Habilitat is his legacy, besides the children, besides the family, this, that, and the other thing. Ultimately, Habilitat was his legacy. And till today, Habilitat lives on. He planted a seed, he nurtured it, he made it grow, and he passed on the torch. Prematurely, unfortunately, but he passed the torch. And my mother was the mother of Habilitat. There are so many people that, she touched so many lives. And even to our standards, if they didn't make it at the time, they might have left prematurely. And then I hear from them 5-10 years later, and, the one thing they tell me is, I remember your mom, I remember what she told me. And that's what made me get back on my feet, So they were the conscience of the program. They were the leaders of the program. They created it, they nurtured it, and as a result, there are thousands and thousands of people out there that have benefited from their wisdom.
So yeah. There's about 15,000 rehabs in the United States. Habilitat, I hear it over and over and over from parents, from participants in the program, from people who graduated, and even colleagues, that work for other programs. I hear it over and over. Habilitat is different. Habilitat is special. Why is that, you think? What's so different about it? What's so special about it?
You can't get this stuff from a book, There are no guidelines for it. Vinnie Moreno, out of the experience he had personally in 4 or 5 different other programs at the time before he actually straightened out. At the time was Delancey Street, and then I'm drawing a blank, but that.
Synanon, there was Synanon, there was Phoenix, and there was Daytop.
In Daytop, yes.
Yeah. Actually, Delancey Street was actually started by one of the guys named John. Vinnie and John were in Synanon together.
Yes.
And Delancey and Habilitat started the same year. They both kind of went off and said, we're going to open our own thing or whatever. So
yeah. And
Vinnie used to tell about. Yeah, go ahead.
They remained friends. Synanon, I don't believe he remained friends with those people because they had a different concept. It was a concept for life. You know, you never graduated the program. Once you were in it, you know, till death, which he didn't believe in. He believed in self-reliance. He believed in getting somebody, you know, that needed help, giving them the tools to live, to grow, and then be on their way, you know. And how do you do that? And so it's like raising your own children, you know. It's the same analogy, just in a concept of about 2 or 3 years. Right. And so as a result of that, he formed the 9 concept. He formed his mantra. He formed his school of survival, and he lived by it. And so did my mother. And that's truly, you know, what that was the foundation of Habilitat. It didn't come out of a book. It came out from the heart. And he just had that instinct. He had the capability to convey that, to materialize that. And it was tough. I mean, we picketed, we, you know, did all sorts of things against the grain. But I tell you, anybody that was in that area, you know, in the 70s and in the 80s, everybody knew who Vinnie Moreno was. You know, he stood out. He was an existentialist. He didn't really care about anything but what he was focused on, and himself and Habilitat. And he was able to create this foundation that survived 20 years later. It's incredible.
Yeah, definitely incredible. He used to talk about in the meetings he would run about how Habilitat would live on long after he was gone. And, you know, I remember you giving that press conference in his office after he suddenly passed away. There were a lot of people that thought, oh, well, that's it. Without Vinnie, there will be no Habilitat. It was a cult of personality kind of thing. He used to brag about the fact, no, this thing's going to live on long past me. So we're now 20 years beyond his life. And he's still very much a part of what we do today. His picture and your mom's picture is prominently displayed on the wall. There's still stories about it. They still read the book. And the things that he taught us are still being taught today. The same concepts, the same formula for success is still being used today. In fact, it's ironic because there is now a resurgence of this model that he perfected that is popping up all over the country, and basically doing the same type of thing in other places around the country. I think people have started to figure out that the cure, or, you know, he always said that we ain't curing nobody. There ain't no cure. It's, you know, you learn to live beyond or whatever. But people found out that these 30-day programs, while they may work for some people, and I'm not knocking them, but the bottom line is there's a lot of people that's just not a substantial enough programming to get people to do better. It's been my opinion for many years that, you know, focusing on abstinence alone, it's short-sighted. Like you said early on in his interview, addiction, substance use is a symptom of a great many other problems. And, you know, we don't do a whole lot of talking about substance use at Habilitat. We talk about all the other problems, and we try to fix those things and prepare people. You've been in, so Vinnie's been gone now 20 years. Your mom's been gone about, I think, 18 years, but you're still very much involved with Habilitat. You are on the board of directors. You are an advisor to the staff. You're certainly an advisor to me. I've called you many times about many things. Why do you remain involved, you know, 20 years after they're gone? I mean, you have no obligation, but, you know, you're still involved. Why is that?
Habilitat is my family. You know, I was raised at Habilitat. The cause is real. The struggle is real. And Habilitat is the cause that I will always fight for till I die. You know, I feel the need to carry the legacy on. And so giving back is one of the most important things you can do. Whatever goes around comes around, you know, you can't keep it unless you give it away. There's so many of the basic concepts that Habilitat has that I live by. And so I will never not be a part of Habilitat. I couldn't imagine it.
Well, we appreciate your service. And for me especially, it's very important to have those links to the past. You know, and you know, I refer to you as our legacy member, right? So you keep us in line with the legacy, right? So that's an important thing, because we don't ever want to stray too far from you know, the roots of what it's all about. And you and actually your sister is involved as well, and Jerry. So we have several of the Marino family members that are still on the governance, you know, still involved with the governance of the organization. So that's a wonderful thing. There's been a lot of programs, even in Hawaii, but certainly in the country, that have come and gone through the years. You mentioned earlier, like Synanon, it's not there anymore. It was the very first therapeutic community. But the guy got kind of, you know, Chuck Tiedrick, who started the place in the beginning, it was a great thing, and he kind of let his ego get out of control, and you know, it turned into something completely different. There have been a lot of programs that have come and gone. Some of them did good work, but they just didn't survive. Why do you think Habilitat survived the test of time? In January, it'll be 50 years of continuous service of the same programming for 50 years. Why do you think we lasted so long?
The foundation was set. You know, Vinnie Moreno knew that he wasn't going to last forever, unfortunately. And his pride, if anything, wanted to make sure that Habilitat would last beyond his years. And everything we teach, you know, it's all about self-reliance. He bucked the medical industry before we even had a Band-Aid program. He knew that was coming up in the pipeline, you know. And so he knew that self-reliance was key. He knew that people were key, you know, and he created this formula that just worked, and it could work for other programs. The model definitely could work for other programs. He used to work with people and try to help them long distance, but and was offered to run programs long distance, but knew that that wouldn't work, because you really need to have your hands in. You need to be there 24/7, because, you know, the heartbeat of the program is the people. And so once you lose touch of the people, once you lose touch of your beginnings, then it comes to an end, you know, so.
Yeah, so I remember him talking about being offered to open different branches of Habilitat all over, actually, the Philippines. I know he was propositioned very seriously in Houston, Texas, and some in California, and he always declined. And, you know, when I was in the program back in the 80s or whatever, I always thought, you know, why wouldn't he want to make more or whatever? Now that I'm directly involved with it or whatever, I totally get it, because it's, you know, it's a real challenge to run one well, right? And I couldn't imagine trying to expand and run, you know, multiple facilities, because it takes, you know, it takes a group of committed people committed to this lifestyle. Because really, it's not a job, right? It's not a job. It's a passion. It's a life.
The key to the whole thing is you can't go to school for this. Like, right. The people that run Habilitat, Jeff, you are a graduate of Habilitat. 95% of your employees are graduates. They are byproducts of the program. So it's almost virtually impossible to duplicate that, you know, unless you start from the ground on up, you know, and to establish and train people and employ people that have gone through the program and that are willing to stay and that have the commitment, you know, to be a lifer at Habilitat, as far as working there, being consistent with the lifestyle of what you teach. That's key. And so you can't duplicate it, you know. It could, you know, it could be created somewhere else, but you got to start from scratch again. You know, you have to create this program, and then these people go through the program, and there's going to be a percentage of people that are going to leave prematurely. There's going to be a percentage of people that are going to go through the program and flourish. They might not want to stay. So those people move on, which is great. You know, so there's a very small percentage of people that actually wind up staying and being employed under, you know, Habilitat. And so to duplicate that is pretty tough, next to impossible.
It's not easy. It's not easy to do even with one. You know, to pick the right people that are committed to that level or whatever, it's always a challenge. So you're you know, I was very, very blessed to have known your parents. I went through the program twice because I was an idiot and I was a knucklehead and I didn't get it fixed the first time. But the second time, it transformed my life in ways that I can't even explain, to be real honest with you. Your parents, from our perspective, were extraordinary people, both of them in their own right, in different ways, actually. If you could just kind of explain from Lila's perspective, who was Vinnie Moreno? What was he about? Who was Vicky Moreno? What was she about? Explain for the people watching who these people were.
Vinnie Moreno was an individual that he was an extremely strong man. He was very strong-headed. He was very resourceful. He surrounded himself with people that he knew he could learn from. He was a high school dropout, you know, and he created this empire, you know, of an organization that is here today, 20 years beyond his life. He never accepted no for an answer. And he always looked out for the underdog. The underdog was his heart. That's what kept him going, because he wanted to help people like himself. Losers, you know, in the streets, people that were probably the most talented, the most sensitive, but just went the wrong way, you know, and they needed that guidance to be steered and taught the other way, and to translate that negativity and turn it around into a positive lifestyle. So all the effort that it took, you know, the junkies of the world to get their next fix, how are you going to turn that person around and create that energy that was in such a negative lifestyle and turn it into a positive? That's who Vinnie Moreno was. And he did it himself. And as a result, he created Habilitat that has proven the test of time. Vicky Moreno, she was a strong woman. She had her ethics. She did not take shit from anybody. You could, you know, she stood up to the biggest, the baddest guys you know, from prison, and they would just melt in front of her. She just had that presence of a strong individual that really didn't put up with shit from anybody. You know, she had a passion for helping people. She had a passion for making women stronger. You know, the flowers of the organization, she tried to nurture. She had a passion for cooking. She was a fantastic cook.
Oh, yeah.
A wonderful mother and grandmother. You know, my daughter was lucky enough to have been with her and spent time with her, you know, till her passing. And unfortunately, my niece and my nephew hasn't. You know, they didn't have the opportunity to know their grandparents. So, yeah, she was a very, very passionate person and put all that passion into really the number one thing in her life, which was Habilitat. I used to yell at her too. I used to tell her, go make friends with other people, you know, outside the program. Because the reality is, you know, just the way the program is set up, people leave, you know. So I knew at times she would have a hole in her heart because for whatever reason, they'd be leaving for good, bad, you know. But she never really had the desire to socialize with anybody, you know. Her whole life was Habilitat. They were pretty incredible people. They
certainly were.
Yeah.
They certainly were extraordinary people. One of the things that I recognized early on is they both had it too. They had this special ability or this knack, this some almost like a superpower, if you ask me, but people wanted to give their best to Vicky and Vinnie Moreno. And they had this ability to get people to dig down deep. And, you know, even those of us that were street addicts, ex-cons, once they started working with you, they had the ability to get people to dig down deep and want to do their best and want to perform at a higher level and want to, you know, they got people to want to get better. What do you think that was all about? Because I mean, not everybody has that. I mean, I tried to develop those skills or whatever, but it's like, you know, I have to work at it. They seem to have it inherently. Do you have any idea? Do you know what I'm talking about? And do you have any idea how that was cultivated and developed?
I speak to you, you know, on a professional level about that, on how to kind of create that that need in people. There's certain people that, you know, that have a lot of potential, and that potential is seen by people like you know, that are in tune to character and in tune to just what they could achieve, you know. And they just, both of them, they looked out for the underdog, and they knew that they could extract things from people.
Right.
That nobody else could or would even give a chance to, you know. Anybody else would just kind of look past this person and think, oh, they're a loser, you know, and move on. But if anything, those are the people that they concentrated on. Those are the people that they put their efforts into, you know. And I remember in the program, throughout the years, they would have this core program within the program where the people that they saw needed a little extra help to pull that potential out. And they would create these groups, and they would work with these people. And the house, meaning the rest of the residents in the program, they would be in awe of these people, because they didn't get special treatment, but they were given an opportunity that was very, very special, because they did get they got more attention in that respect, you know, where those people were being groomed. And that would be a rotating crew, you know, it wouldn't be just one, you know, group of people. It would be a rotating crew. And that crew of people had the ability, you know, were given the ability to be able to pull people under their wings. And so that's how the gift was passed on, right? And that's how these other people kind of got drawn in. And it was a positive kind of click. You know, you wanted to be a part of that positive click. And if the train was all going in one direction, it would be very obvious of the ones that didn't belong. And those are the ones that would leave, because their true heart wasn't in it. You know, they were there for the wrong reasons, and those people would fall off. So it was kind of like a suction almost, that you were drawn into, but it was a positive direction, you know.
So I do want to be respectful of your time and whatnot, but as we forge ahead with Habilitat, what are your hopes, and where do you see Habilitat heading in the next 5 years? It's been challenging because of COVID, but we're still here, and certainly not in any risk of not being able to provide services or whatever. But where do you hope to see Habilitat in the future?
I think Habilitat has a great future. There will be people out there that will always need Habilitat services. I think self-reliance is truly the key. You know, the fact that we don't sell out for insurance or other parameters that we would need to stay in line, you know, that we would be true to ourselves with our concepts and how we've got to the point where we are today to continue to flourish. And as a result of that, create perhaps new businesses that could branch out, that would enable us to service the public as well as bring in income for ourselves. And then just opening up the exposure to the world, maybe in a different light, where I think, you know, from before, Vinnie Moreno had the ability to connect with people all over the world. I think maybe we should try to concentrate in that direction as well, which I know you've been doing. You've been making efforts to connect with people that maybe have overlooked us. You know, we just need to be recognized. And as a result of that, become a leader in the industry, which we are, you know, as far as concept is concerned.
Yeah, well, the statistics, the success rate speaks for itself. You know, I get sometimes criticism from people and whatever, and I'm always like, well, you know, when you're running the largest treatment center in your state and getting the kind of successes that we're getting, come talk to me then. Until then, like, you know, I don't want to, you know, I don't want to put off anybody, but there have been naysayers and critics for 50 years. And in most cases, we've outlived all of them. And we're still doing it. So I share your vision for the future. And, you know, obviously we're working hard to make that a reality. You know, I will say that, that it's, there's some big shoes to fill, to try and fill. You know, I don't ever pretend that I'm trying to be like your father or your mother. We're simply trying to carry on the legacy and the work that saved us, you know, in my case, you know, 24 years ago, how long it's been. And I'm obviously very proud of the fact that we're doing it. We're still here, and the program is every bit as successful as it was. And it's all thanks to their teaching. It's all thanks to the things that they instilled in us, and and then our choice to make that our lifestyle. Do you have any, we've been on for about an hour now. I try and keep these things at about an hour, but do you have any parting words for the people that are going to be watching this? We have some people watching now. In fact, we have an international audience. There's people in Europe watching, there's people on the mainland watching, people on the East Coast, people in other Hawaiian islands. We have quite an audience today. What kind of parting words would you have, Lila?
All I could say is you're doing a great job. Habilitat is strong. The Habilitat is here for anybody that needs help. And I'm just very proud of, and I know Vinnie and Vicky would be very proud of carrying that legacy, and making sure that there's a place for somebody that is wanting to change. It's an opportunity for an individual to not only get their lives together, but hopefully, you know, develop their future so that they could be role models for their children and their grandchildren. There have been so many people that have been touched by Habilitat, and they're the one thing that I tell the girls when I run seminars is Habilitat is one of those experiences that you're never going to experience again in your life. You become so close to one another. There's going to be such difficult times, but then as a result of those difficult times, there'll be times that you're never going to forget for the rest of your life. It's just, you know, the best experience to be able to find a place that gets it, you know, find a place that really could actually help you, you know, get out of the gutter that you're in, you know. It's helped so many people, and I'm very proud to be a part of it and to be a byproduct of it. I use the tools that I've learned at Habilitat every day of my life. I've taught my daughter, and now I'm teaching my grandson the same concepts and the same tools. I'm a successful realtor as a result of it. I wake up every day and I'm disciplined, and I make something out of nothing. I make sure that everything I do is coming from the heart and is true to who I am. And I vouch for Habilitat. I vouch for everything that it stands for.
Me too, obviously. So now it's time for shameless plugs. Lila is a licensed realtor for Berkshire Hathaway on the island of Oahu. She has helped a great number of us realize our dreams of becoming, you know, property owners here in Hawaii. If you or any of your family members are looking to buy or sell, I trust Lila. I've been involved with her for many, many years. I've known her for, gosh, going back to 1985. It's been a long time. She helped me and several of our staff find the right property for our homes. And if you want to reach out, where can they reach out to you, Lila, if they need real estate services?
My phone number is 808-341-6034. I'm with Berkshire Hathaway. I'm a luxury specialist. My email is Lila MC at bhhshawaii.com. And
So-
I have a website that I'm actually revamping, but right now the name of it is kailuarealestateoahu.com.
So you're a luxury specialist, but you do work with people that, you know,
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
are trying to get into the market for the first time or
Absolutely,
whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I plug this not because you know, I mean, she's a well-known realtor, but you know, there might be people watching that are in a position where, you know, they're ready to take on home ownership, and sometimes that can be kind of a, especially the first time, it can be kind of a scary thing. And you definitely want somebody who's knowledgeable. You have intimate knowledge about Habilitat and the challenges that those of us coming out of the program face. So, you know, it's a win-win, I think, for everybody involved, which is why I would, you know, recommend that people contact you, because you'll help them. You'll make sure that they go through the process, and you know, they're taken care of. You know, so
Absolutely.
highly recommend you for that. And yeah, so anything else you'd like to say? I'm going to have to head on to the office here in a minute, but I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. It's been a great conversation. It's nice to hear all the history of Habilitat. Maybe we'll do this again sometime and maybe speak about some of the crazy things that,
Oh, yeah.
you know, because we have some crazy stories. You have obviously more than I do, but I have crazy stories that I tell sometimes too that they're intriguing, and they're amazing stories with great outcomes. So let's do this again sometime, and I'll be in touch with you soon. We have some meetings coming up or whatever, but I certainly appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today and to share all this stuff with everybody. Maybe at some point we can get your sister to do this as well. I think it's important that we keep the history of Habilitat alive, and I think people need to know how we got to where we are. So thank you, Lila.
Thank you.
All right. You have a great day. We'll talk soon.
You too.
Aloha.
All right.
Bye-bye.